The sun had just begun its slow crawl over the horizon when Dr. Gabriel Santos stepped off the small, battered bush plane that had carried him into one of the most remote regions of northern Kenya. His boots sank into the red, dusty earth as local children stared with curiosity, some holding hands, others clutching small goats to their chest. The village was tiny, almost invisible on any map, and yet it was here that Gabriel's life was about to intersect with something extraordinary, something that would test every ounce of skill, courage, and faith he had in medicine and in humanity. Gabriel had volunteered through a global aid organization, responding to a desperate plea for medical assistance in a part of Africa where access to even the most basic healthcare was a luxury. The hospital, if it could be called that, was a single-story mud brick building with a corrugated iron roof. Inside, the stench of antiseptic mixed with the earthy odor of the soil outside, and the faint hum of a diesel generator served as the only reminder that this place was connected, somehow, to the modern world. There were no advanced machines, no fully stocked surgical instruments, and certainly no anesthetic equipment that would be familiar to someone trained in Manila. Yet, Gabriel had come prepared in spirit and in skill. He was greeted by the local chief, a tall man named Manji, whose face was weathered from decades of sun, wind, and worry. Mwangi's hand shook slightly as he led Gabriel to a small room, where a young boy named Kamau lay on a wooden cot. His chest rose and fell with difficulty, and his mother clutched his hand as if holding on to hope itself could make the illness vanish. Kamau had been suffering from a severe abdominal infection that, if left untreated, would almost certainly be fatal. The village had tried every remedy they knew, from herbal teas to traditional healers, but the infection had only grown worse. Gabriel took a deep breath. He had read the boy's chart on a scrap of paper, handwritten in near illegible ink. The boy's temperature was dangerously high, and his pulse raced. A basic assessment indicated that the infection had caused internal complications. Some kind of obstruction or abscess was most likely pressing against his organs. In a hospital in Manila, this would have been a routine surgical operation, but here, the lack of equipment made it borderline impossible. There was no sterile surgical kit, no proper anesthesia, not even a functioning suction device. The only tools available were a few rusty scalpels, a set of scissors, a flashlight, and buckets of water. Gabriel closed his eyes and silently ran through every possible procedure he knew. He thought of the countless surgeries he had performed back home, each one backed by sophisticated machines and a team of trained staff. Here, he had only himself, a small group of nurses with minimal training, and an entire village looking to him as if he were their last lifeline. The weight of responsibility was crushing, yet in that pressure, he found focus. He gathered the nurses and began instructing them in calm, precise steps. They would improvise what they could, boiling instruments to sterilize them, creating makeshift anesthesia using a combination of strong local herbs and small doses of sedatives that had been shipped in, and constructing a basic operating table from planks and sacks. Gabriel knew that improvisation was the key, but it had to be careful, precise, and safe or the consequences would be catastrophic. As the sun climbed higher, Gabriel prepared Kamau for surgery. The boy was terrified, naturally, and his mother tried to comfort him, whispering prayers under her breath. Gabriel knelt beside him, holding his small hand. "Kamau," he said softly, "we are going to help you." "You are very brave." The boy nodded, his eyes wide with fear and trust. The operation began under a tin roof that rattled with the occasional gust of wind. Gabriel worked with methodical precision, cleaning and sterilizing his makeshift instruments as best as he could. He relied on his senses, the sight of swelling, the sound of fluid under the skin, the faint tremor in the boy's abdomen to guide every incision. He had performed many surgeries in emergency settings before, but never with such limited resources. Each cut, each stitch had to be deliberate, each movement considered. One mistake could end Kamau's life. Hours passed. Sweat ran down Gabriel's face as he operated under the hot sun, the thin light of the small bulbs barely illuminating the area. The nurses passed him instruments, soaked in boiling water, and whispered encouragement. The village waited outside, anxious but silent, understanding the gravity of what was unfolding. Gabriel's mind was entirely on Kamau, on the task at hand. He drew on every ounce of training, intuition, and instinct he had accumulated over years in surgery. When he reached the site of the infection, he discovered that the boy's appendix had ruptured days earlier, creating a massive abscess that threatened to poison the bloodstream. It was a delicate situation, one that would have been simpler with proper drainage systems and suction equipment. Here, he had only his hands, a bucket, and an unshakable focus. Carefully, methodically, he drained the abscess, cleaned the infected area, and stitched the boy's internal organs with precision that bordered on miraculous. Every movement had to be perfect because failure was not an option. After what felt like an eternity, Gabriel leaned back for a moment, allowing himself a breath. The worst part was over. The incision was closed, the infection removed, and Camo's condition was stable. He monitored the boy carefully, giving him what little post-operative care was possible with the limited supplies. The nurses worked tirelessly, administering fluids and herbs to boost his recovery, while Gabriel documented everything with painstaking detail, knowing that the slightest oversight could undo hours of work. Word of the successful operation spread quickly through the village. The chief, Mwangi, shook Gabriel's hand with tears in his eyes. "You have saved my son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "No one here thought it could be done." "You are like a spirit sent to us." Gabriel only nodded, humbly, knowing that it was not magic, but a combination of knowledge, courage, and determination that had made the difference. Camo's mother hugged Gabriel tightly, whispering over and over, "Thank you. Thank you. You're a miracle." Gabriel's heart ached with emotion. He had trained to save lives, but it was moments like this where every tool had to be imagined, every decision critical, and every life hanging by a thread that reminded him why he became a doctor. It was never about the machines, the hospitals, or the advanced technology. It was about presence, skill, and an unyielding commitment to do everything possible no matter the circumstances. In the days that followed, Gabriel stayed in the village, helping with follow-up care and teaching the nurses new techniques that could be applied with the limited resources available. He trained them to improvise without compromising safety, showing them how to sterilize instruments in boiling water, how to monitor patients with nothing but observation and intuition, and how to administer care when modern medical equipment was absent. By the end of his stay, the nurses were confident, capable, and inspired, carrying forward knowledge that could save countless lives long after Gabriel returned to Manila. The story of Camo's operation eventually reached international aid circles, highlighting the incredible adaptability and heroism of doctors working in extreme conditions. Gabriel never sought recognition. He had been drawn to the mission purely out of compassion and a desire to serve. Yet, the story inspired a generation of young Filipino medical professionals to believe in the power of ingenuity and courage, showing that even in the most resource-deprived environments, lives could be saved with determination, knowledge, and heart. Gabriel often reflected on the experience. He remembered the sweat, the tension, the fear, and the ultimate relief as Camo opened his eyes and smiled weakly after the operation. He remembered the anxious faces of the villagers and the way hope had returned to their eyes when they realized that life could be restored even under the harshest conditions. The operation had been more than a medical success. It had been a lesson in humanity, resilience, and the profound difference one person could make. Years later, Gabriel would return to the village, greeted as a hero, but always reminding everyone that the true miracle had been the trust, courage, and collaboration of the people around him. The nurses who had learned under his guidance continued to care for patients in improvised conditions, spreading knowledge and hope. Camo grew up healthy and strong, a living testament to the power of skill, compassion, and courage. In the end, Gabriel's story was not just about a Filipino doctor performing a miracle operation with zero equipment. It was about the essence of what it means to be a healer. It was about showing up, believing in your ability to make a difference, and refusing to surrender to circumstances. It was about using every ounce of knowledge, creativity, and heart to save a life when everything else seemed impossible. The village of northern Kenya would forever remember that day the day a Filipino doctor arrived with no machines, no fancy tools, no guarantees, and yet performed a miracle. And Gabriel Santos, humble and unwavering, left a legacy that transcended borders. A story whispered in the wind, retold around fires, and etched forever in the hearts of those whose lives he had touched. Because sometimes the greatest miracles are not performed with the most advanced equipment, but with courage, skill, and an unshakable belief that a life is worth fighting for no matter where in the world you are. And for those who wondered if miracles truly existed, Kamal's laughter echoing through the village proved that they did.